goodness. This is quite already too much in there. I think I should do a quick weekend project. Does your scrap box look like mine? Already too much fabric in and you need an inspirational idea what to do with all those scraps? I pulled out all my greens because green is my favorite color here. And then I did this modern cool pillow and I'll show you how I did it. Let's just hop into the project. So, and what you need is a main fabric, which you also use for your backside. I decided to have a solid grass green and you need about half a yard here. Also, you will cut your first strip from that main fabric. It is 2.5 inch wide. And then you need 7 more strips, each is 2.5 inch wide and approximately 26 inch long. Some of my scraps were shorter like that, but I know later when I have to trim the pillow front to square, this will be a diagonal cut, so I'm okay with the shorter strips at the end. So this is how I will arrange my strips, and it's just important that they will align on the right edge. Now let's go to the sewing machine and put that strip set together. The sewing machine said, enough of that strip show, so I go to Du wolltest was lustig, yes. Okay, so I went to my cutting table for the rotary cutter and I really want to trim off straight the right edge perpendicular to my seams. Then I split this panel in 2 segments. I align the ruler with a 60-degree mark onto a seam and the edge goes through the right upper corner. To achieve this modern striking look of my pillow, I want to replace this part and that part with the main fabric. So this should be here and here, and therefore I have to rip off the both lower rows and upper rows with my seam ripper. Now I saw on my grass green replacement pieces, the upper one is 3.5 inch by 5 inch, the lower one is 8 inch by 5 inch, and the right edge has to be aligned. I've pressed my 2 new seams in place and align the upper part with this edge, cutting it through. Now the magic happens. We turn our larger segment in a way that the diagonal line becomes now the vertical edge. And bring that little segment over here, like that. And you might wonder where to position this edge exactly. Now think about, you want to cover a 16-inch pillow and you add a little bit of seam allowance, so let's say we want to have 17-inch square here. So we have to think of a parallel from 17 inch apart from that side. And then this little corner has to meet the left edge. Also you want to check if this is covering 17 inch. So let's check that one. Okay, we will cover 17 inch here and there. Okay, we're fine. Just flip it over, pin it in place and sew it. Again, after pressing, I'm back to my cutting table and I want to trim off those dog ears here. When we have now 2 edges already from the square, we have to cut the 2 remaining edges 17 inch apart, as I mentioned. So we mark a line here. And I give myself also markings here. This is the finished top of the pillow, and then we go and quilt it with a modern style. But before I even can consider my quilting motif, I have to build my quilt sandwich, and to easily wash it later, I start with a lining here, and then I have a fusible web, and it has those gluing dots underneath, so when I press the both layers together, these will stick. And both are slightly larger than my actual pillow top, so everything will be well covered. And now, to avoid that this pillow top will move around during the quilting process, I use a spray glue. This one. This is made for textiles and it will wash completely out later. So let me bring those 3 layers together and then I go to the sewing machine. But wait a minute, before I head to my sewing machine, let's discuss our quilting options. So you could, for example, go with a circle spiral, which I like very much. It's a cool modern motif. Or you could do free motion quilting. But I prefer to enhance the structure of my piecing with the quilting. So what I see here is a bunch of parallel strips in this direction and then others in that direction. Means I will quilt with parallel lines for this part in this direction and for the other part then in that direction. Let's do it. Once the pillow top is quilted, I have to square it up to size. So I got myself this filling over here. And the label said it is 16 inch by 16 inch, but I like to check the measurements. Actually, it's only 15.5. So in addition, this one looks quite flat. And I don't like flat pillows on my couch. I want them puffy and thick like that. So I decided I won't add too much seam allowance. I just trim it down to 15.5 and the seam allowance will shrink it down so that the filling will pop up. I align my 60-degree marking from the ruler, so I have my side edge defined. With the neatly squared pillow front, we only need one last step, and that is the envelope closure on the back side. For that I need 2 pieces, so both should be in width at least as large as my pillow top. I gave it just a little bit more, and then both pieces have to overlap. So I went for a 8-inch overlapping here. Let's check. Okay, 8 inches. So the cutting size is 12-inch by 16-inch. Each piece now needs a nice, neat seam, a small one. So let's prepare for that. I scratch it about 3/4 of an inch. And 3/8 of an inch. So now I have my seam creases already in place. Can fold that one over and clip everything. This one is ready for the machine. Go forward with the other one in the same manner and then top stitch the bows. I've got a top stitch foot and we'll insert that one. And I thought I could embellish my pillow with this ironing on label. I go back to my usual 1/4-inch foot. This is how my both back panels look finished and seamed. The label is on top and I now just flip my front right sides on top of that one. And hold it in place with some Wonder Clips. Now I piece the both parts together with a 1/4-inch seam all around. Of course you can piece together the both layers with a regular straight stitch, but if your machine has something like a fake overlock stitch, this would be the better choice here. Once I have sewn together front and back, I trim off the excess fabric after backing where needed. Now, before I turn the inside out, I also want to trim off these little corners to make them later nice and crisp, but be very careful not to trim off the connecting seam. Now let's see the finished pillow cover. Ta-da! Turn inside out. I have this tool, this is from Bookbinders actually, and it helps me to poke out these corners neatly and crisp. That's why you trim off those little edges, because you don't, those little corners, because you don't want to have too much bulk in these corners, so that they get really neat and crisp. And now, let's get the filling in. Well, my scrap box isn't much emptier yet, but that is good news for you, because it means we will show more of those scrap tutorials in the future, like this super cool pillow here. So if you want to see more of those tutorials, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next one.